Okay, hello, test, test.
Okay, now try it.
Oh, good. I have bars moving.
Test?
Check, check, check.
Good call.
Is that coming
Did you
through
hear
to you?
On YouTube?
Okay, I have bars moving.
We're good. Check, check, check.
Okay.
Wait.
Good call.
Okay, I'm
You got it.
recording.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, let's get started. This is the work session for the Planning Commission for Cottonwood Heights this Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. Got a lot on our business agenda, and that is what we do in our work meeting is run through our business agenda items and then any additional discussion we have. So let's just go ahead and get started. We've got a lot to cover. And our first one is, let's see, the subdivision of the duplex, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just gonna open it and then Andy will present.
Okay, perfect. Oh, and I got it. Sorry. Just
We have a little bit of a different IT setup tonight, so I hope you guys are bear with us as we try to
I understand.
figure out all the
We've all
different
been there, I'm sure.
buttons.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll give a brief overview.
Oh, and
This-
two seats, that's why.
Yeah, this application is pretty simple, straightforward. It's a plat amendment for Murray number 7 plat amended 7280 Ponderosa Drive. So today we're requesting approval for a preliminary plat called Murray number 7 plat amended. This is converting 2 condominium lots to 2 standard lots.
Presumably this is so they can sell them separately.
It's to help the sale, yes. So here's an image of the property. It's in the R2a zone. It's the our twin home or duplex zone. It's in the neighborhood adjacent to some single family zoning. I've highlighted, so I've got the 2 plats side by side. The red and blue highlights are mine just to kind of simplify, but it's an existing building with 2 units. There are 2 condominium units with common areas surrounding. The request is to just make them standard lots with just, the lot split down the middle. What the code requires for plat amendments is that the Planning Commission has to find that neither the public nor any person will be materially injured by the alteration, and that there is good cause for the alteration. The zoning ordinance has a requirement for lots in the R2-8 zone. They can be split so that each unit can have its own lot. The minimum lot size is 4,000 square feet. So in both cases, we find that it meets the requirements of the ordinance. There's no new building, no change to the site. So no harm to the neighborhood, and it meets the minimum lot size. So that's all I have for you. We recommend approval. We've got model motions prepared for when the next meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion, commissioners?
Got a quick question and just review of the R2A zoning. I just.
Gotta continue your microphone on
Sure,
there.
sorry. This one?
Yeah, either one, yeah.
All right, so I took a quick look at the R2A zoning and maybe it's just the language is a bit obtuse, but the permitted uses are single family detached or, and or 2-family detached. And this is talking about attached. I was just wondering what the legal interpretation was of that.
Sure. I think that the way I would interpret that is the 2-family detached means the building
A
has 2
townhome.
units, but it's detached from any others. So basically a duplex or a twin home would count as a 2-family detached building.
The second question I had, I figured that was the interpretation, but just wanted to put it out there that the second one that I had is, I saw the application and said, okay, they're clearly gonna raise the buildings and sell 2 lots or whatever else. Do we have any concern about the reduction in terms of the lot size for this or?
So they would not be allowed to build 2 separate buildings on either lot. The lot split that allows 4,000 square foot lots is only if there's a single
Unit.
building with
Okay.
2 units splitting for ownership purposes.
And I think you misunderstood. They're not raising the building.
Well, not now.
They're just changing the ownership.
No, I understand that,
He's
but
looking forward, I think.
Yeah,
which could
absolutely.
happen.
I mean, they're not changing the plat just to change the plat.
And would not be allowed to build 2 separate non-detached or non-attached buildings.
Correct, yeah. The maximum that could be on the side is one
Okay.
2-unit building.
But this would allow two property owners, two separate property owners with separate, yards. Let me ask one clarifying question. Any issues that we see with utilities going in and out? Because it's likely that it's one system that's going in and out. We don't have any challenges related to that because that will affect one property owner more than another.
That's a good point.
I don't think that our city ordinance regulates that. I don't, other than.
No, it'll be up
just-
to the
yeah,
owners
just
to
whatever.
figure that out.
Okay, I just want to make sure we wouldn't have any cause for concern or that there would need to be a notation in the plat.
Sewer and water letters are required to sign the plat. Well, they're required for the health department to sign the plat, so that review will happen. And then gas and internet and other utilities will just be a matter of working that out with the private utility company.
Yeah, I mean, Dominion can split that.
Yeah.
But it's not that complicated probably now because the Bradley family trust owns both currently. So it's not like we're talking about two separate condo owners or anything.
But it would be good to know if you bought the one versus the other to know that, okay, if there's a problem, one side's going to get dug up more than the other.
Yeah, it's not common anymore. It's now, yeah.
Do we have a precedent for this in other duplexes? I mean, is this common?
We did this right across the street a year or two ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can see the mouse, but I think it was these right here. There were 8 units. About 2 years ago, we did this exact same thing. I don't know the technicalities of it, but it has to do with the financing of getting a loan to purchase an entire condominium association is a separate category. So
And those ones were connected?
they were double units, but I think there were 4 with 2 units in each, and we split them all.
I think you get more complications with FHA financing with condos because it's maximum rentals per building versus if it's all just townhome ownership. You're just buying the townhome.
Right, I think it's something like that is the main reason for the request.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, let's move on.
Can I come back up for this one? And we'll toggle over to. Sorry, it wants me to join this audio, but we don't need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to be going through our first conditional use application tonight. This is at 1441 East Fort Union Boulevard. Some of you may remember an application here a few years back for advanced behavior analysis, came through the planning commission then. You can see on our vicinity map, it's a little bit faint on the screens up here, but it's highlighted there in blue, just.
It's better on the one behind you.
Behind you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay, so right here, the applicant is requesting conditional use approval for an audio retail store at this location. We'll just kind of go through their proposal here. This just gives a street view. You might recognize it more easily by that street view there. So looking at the zoning, this property, like most of its westward neighbors, is zoned neighborhood commercial. You'll see there's a handful of different zones surrounding it. Got a regional commercial over in Union Park. We have residential single family as well as a little bit of residential multifamily. And then we've also got a bit of public facilities there on Fort Union. The proposed use is a conditional use within the neighborhood commercial zone. So that's why it's coming to you guys tonight, just like the advanced behavior analysis did when it went through this process. The applicant is proposing locating an audio retail store in this existing building. They anticipate 9 to 6, Monday through Friday for their operating hours. Those are the hours they currently operate in Sandy. They've been operating out of a location in Sandy for 17 years, just looking to locate into our city. They plan to have within this space, office space and room for customer consultation. The bulk of their business is installing in people's homes, so that will all be taking place off-site. At the location on Fort Union, they're just proposing to have, office area, space to meet with clients. They just have one employee that they're proposing for on-site location, and their other employees will handle the installations. Based on their operations in Sandy, they generally have about 5 clients per day, and he informed us that they don't tend to overlap. It's typically 1 at a time or maybe 2 at a time. So that just gives kind of a nice overview of his proposed business. Looking at the site layout, so the previous use that was approved here with this parking configuration had pretty continual site circulation because there were more pickups and drop-offs with children going to their appointments. So we do anticipate that this proposal before you tonight is significantly lower in intensity as far as the number of people entering and exiting the site. There's no proposed changes to the building or site except for minor signage. So again, both of these were approved with the last use that came through Planning Commission, just changing the business to a different type. Our ordinance requires 8 parking stalls with 1 that's ADA accessible. So the existing parking layout does meet that. The site is currently striped with right in, right out onto Fort Union. We do recommend that that's maintained just as means of, providing kind of clear direction for people navigating the site. We have recommended 2 conditions for your consideration tonight. We recommend approval of the project with the condition that no portion of the neighboring East Jordan Canal Trail be used for parking or business uses. And also with the condition that the right in, right out is just maintained unless otherwise required by the city. So that's really the bulk of my presentation. I've got the model motions for our next meeting, but happy to field questions from commissioners.
I have one about the designation as retail commercial.
Sure.
We do retail, and these guys are really more of a consulting business, it seems like, which is appropriate, I think, for this location because of the traffic flow. Does that open us up to other retail uses in the future?
I believe that it would,
I do
just
too.
because the use that we are categorizing it under, it doesn't specifically say audio store. It does fit under retail. So
Is there another it could fit under with the consulting that they?
I don't believe so. I can kind of check in between here, but when we went through it with the applicant, the way they described their business, it really was most similar to a retail establishment.
So what else would fit under that?
Administrative general and professional office.
That'd be like an insurance office.
No, I
But so an example, Smith's down the road, Hillside Plaza, the little center on Highland Drive that I believe Commissioner Mills has an office in. Those are all neighborhood commercial. So the uses you see there, with some limitations, would be allowed in the neighborhood commercial zone. Now, if they modify the site plan or change the building, that would come back to the Planning Commission for site plan approval.
Right, and they're asking for retail. What else fits in that neighborhood commercial zone?
Under retail or under the whole?
Under not retail.
I can pull up the full list if you guys would like to
I
see
think
it.
that would be helpful just because the things that will fit under retail, potentially in the future can create a lot of traffic havoc. in that
I can read it
location.
here.
you got it.
Studios for artist, designer, writer, photographer, sculptor, or musician, administrative office, medical office, fast food, convenience store / fast food. So that is a different use. Grocery store, convenience store, reception center, bed and breakfast, commercial recreation, church, home occupation, home preschool, daycare, preschool, parks, playgrounds, or community recreation, planned unit development, public and private utility buildings, residential facilities for elderly persons, child or adult daycare facilities, schools, live workspace, private clubs, retail / small commercial.
Yeah, there really isn't much room there for anything else. is
Yeah,
there?
we felt it
Now-
was most naturally under the retail.
Restaurant and convenience stores who have, often more intense impacts, those are different uses.
Right, they would
Those
have to
not
come
be
back for
allowed.
a conditional use.
Right.
Correct.
But if you were to put in a fast food, would have to come back for a
Yeah, it's a
conditional
right.
use.
Any food service would have to come back.
And same with, if there was anything there. like
I have a couple of
office
concerns.
or artist space.
The advanced behavioral people that were in there had the right in, right out signage, and dozens of times per day, because that's the road many of us use. There's people turning out of that center lane, clearly marked with 4 yellow lines. They're driving across that and driving into that driveway, which is fine, except when people are coming out of the target,
Sure,
that road, and then it's chaotic.
sure.
And we told behavioral, you can't have your people turn off of Fort Union into your driveway.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
they said, wait, they got a little Bible out, and they raised their hands, we promise no one will do that.
Sure.
They didn't, they couldn't enforce it.
Sure, I think first and foremost, we anticipate significantly lower intensity at this site.
But
With
their
the,
employees are gonna come up Fort Union and turn
there's
left
just
into their.
one employee that's proposed for the
They have to come
location.
and get their
So
gear.
I think there is, first and foremost, much lower intensity at the site. I think if it's within the commission's purview, then you see it pertinent to consider other conditions that might mitigate your concerns, that's an option you have. But I do just want to acknowledge that this is considerably less pickups and drop-offs
We
than
could have them curb it.
That's what I'm saying, we may have them.
certainly, something you can consider to add additional conditions beyond what staff. has
And
done.
the other one is, 2 of their parking spots are in their garage. And
Correct.
I know what their business is, and that garage is gonna be a warehouse in 5 minutes. And they're not gonna have 8 stalls, they're only gonna have 6. And we got tricked on the sandwich guys.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
And we only have to have this many parking and we'll be fine, and no, you're not.
Something else you could consider possibly with conditions, the city's parking ordinance doesn't specify, in a garage, not in a garage. So if you
Right.
see it fit to consider some conditions that would help mitigate that concern, I think that's something for the commission to decide, but
Well,
it is,
and those are
it
just-
does
those are
meet
my
ordinance as far as parking goes. I think those are good things to bring up
Those are my
as far as your
concerns,
concerns.
is that we've been tricked once before on 2 places, not very far apart
Sure.
from there. Even Stevenson, they're parking, and look, they admit they have a parking.
Always good to be mindful of the impact, especially with a busy area. So
Right.
I think there are some
Mhm.
options you guys can consider with conditions that you look at.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I have a question. What conditions could be suggested? What are options?
Question.
You might have to defer a little bit to Shane on what's within the realm of things you can consider. I know it was brought up. Is there something looking like curb to require the right in, right out? I'm not sure if there's
I think,
basis
yeah.
for doing that.
If
Might
that's
be probably
a
no.
perceived negative impact and, a curb is found to be a reasonable condition that mitigates that concern, that's within the conditional use.
It's also state road. I'm not sure we can go stick a curb.
That's city road,
No, it's on there, and it's on there. It would be
Fort
on their
Union's a-
property.
a city road.
Yeah,
So
just
I do
in
think
there.
a physical barrier is a reasonable condition in this
Just
case.
would
if
need
that's
to-
So we're talking about a curb in their driveway, right? We could. Although that would eliminate one of their parking stalls.
No, not in the bar. I think it needs to be out in the,
You mean like what's across
In
the
the right
street
of
at
way. In the
at, like
median.
the entrance to the Chipotle and Zupa Center?
well,
Is that-
kind of, except you see people drive over that all the time and go, holy crap, I just took the bottom of my car off.
That's what we would recommend. I think it may be a little beyond the scope to have them put a median in the middle of Fort Union.
Yeah, I was thinking you were talking about in the driveway.
Yeah, that we could
Curb.
do. I think
Yeah,
that's reasonable. I don't know.
But what
that-
happens with the loss of the parking? Right, they lose a parking spot.
They would need to probably
Potentially.
propose just a slightly different configuration, I'm guessing, to still meet the 8,
Yeah, I
but
think it's doable.
That might be.
Just
They have
put
the
a-
space.
Just put something like right there.
Yeah, yeah.
for those watching online, I'll try to gesture what we were looking at. It may still meet the diameter needed for.
Yeah, actually, you could put a
the stall
diamond triangle
configuration.
shape.
I think something to alert them, and it's, look, I've not personally run into somebody there, but I have dodged people who were.
Sure.
If it's dangerous and we
It-
can
it-
mitigate that, that's.
I don't
Yeah,
drive it
makes
3
sense.
times a
Could look
day,
at
but
you
I drive
just
it every day.
With any conditions you look
Should have
at
done
requiring,
that.
you just want to make sure they're tied directly to a perceived negative impact.
Yep.
So that
Well,
it-
this is mitigation of traffic.
Right,
So
Well, this helps me with the retail uses too, because that being a permanent or a semi-permanent fixture would be helpful.
is it within our purview or scope to limit their ability to use spaces 4 and 5 for storage versus parking?
Yeah, they have to
I
maintain
think
8,
so.
so, yeah,
Their parking plan says those are parking stalls.
right, they have to
So
maintain them.
we can hold them to what they're saying they're gonna use as parking stalls.
But realistically.
If they don't, then they're
unenforceable,
violating
doors
their
down
conditional use.
Without a
Who
code inspection.
would be
Right.
enforcement
Right, and,
entity?
you know, they may
Code
go,
enforcement.
they may go 5 years and never have a parking issue, but.
Sure, that's the hope.
But when they even
Right.
Steven themselves into a parking lot problem, we said, raise your door up, pal, we need to see your
Sure.
extra 2 spots.
Good to be mindful of all of these
Actually,
possibilities.
we don't have the authority to do that, but.
But it's
City
always
does.
something we can look
Somebody.
into with code enforcement if there's issues down the road with maybe things not being met. So
I
Just a
appreciate
statement
the-
in the conditions that it's clear that parking stalls in the garage are to be maintained at all times.
I think it's clear on the language.
It is
personally,
clear.
but yeah.
something you guys can definitely add the
Make
model
sure they're
motions.
well aware of.
When you
Okay.
do get to that point, do also, you can list other findings and conditions of approval at that
Thank you.
time. So
Thanks,
do you
Sam.
have something else to add?
No, I
Commissioner Mills?
just, we continue to have this struggle and we want small businesses to thrive, but
Yeah.
we've just been kind of hoodwinked a couple times.
Sure.
And when we're starting to kind of use these hybrid, residential, retail, commercial, service oriented businesses, I mean, I think it's a great thing to do, especially on Fort Union, but man, we just think there are implications for not even this group. It's who's coming after, we
And
don't.
that's our job. Yeah.
Yeah.
is to
I
look
can
at that.
appreciate the delicate balance between, wanting people to come and find spots, but also wanting to make sure the public has ease of access. So,
And safety, yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Is everybody ready for me to click off of this one or any other final comments? Okay, I'm gonna go
Ready. Thank
ahead
you,
and
Sam.
stop sharing them.
Okay. Last item is a preliminary plat and planned unit development application, 3625 Dover Hill Drive. This is a popular item tonight. We'll probably have a lot of interest in this one. The subject property here is just west of Wasatch Boulevard, although it's not accessed from Wasatch Boulevard. The address is 3625 Dover Hill Drive. Currently, it is a property, 6.17 acre property owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That building experienced arson in 2017 or 2018, got some damage, and it's not, to my understanding, being used as a church meeting house right now. So it's gone through the property surplus process that the property owner has, and it is now being sold, and I'll explain that in more detail here as we move forward. For context, the zoning today of that property is R18, as is the entire residential area around it, with the exception to the southeast, there's R2a zoning. So that's a two-family twin home duplex type zoning existing today. The rest of that entire neighborhood is R18, which is single family homes, low density, minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet. Make sure I'm not blocking my microphone here. This is the preliminary plat, and I'll come back to this a couple times. What's being proposed by Ivory Homes is a 17 lot, single family subdivision on 4.17 acres of that parcel. And then 2 acres of that parcel will be owned and maintained by the city as a public park. It's a smaller park, but it's a neighborhood scale park. So 2 of the acres will be a public park, and I'll explain at one of the next slides how this kind of situation came to be. Here we go. So in 2020, we became aware that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was considering property surplus. So early on, we reached out, we being Mayor Mike Peterson, the city manager, and I and other city staff reached out to church officials that were assigned to this project on their end to express as much and as often and as strongly as possible that the city had a big interest in retaining as much open space as possible on that property. It's not a public open space today per se, it's privately owned, but it's been used by many people in the neighborhood for years. And if you zoom out, there's no other city park or public open space within walking distance of this property.
Like, does that line represent the property line between Ivory Homes and what would be
No.
potentially city?
No, it doesn't. I'll show you that. This right now, you can see this is the ownership today. The property line is basically the meeting house and the structure in the parking lot and the ball diamond. That's about 3 and 3.
And those are 2 separate parcels.
Or 2 separate parcels,
Now.
but they're the same address being sold together. So, so retaining open space here, we felt is critical for this neighborhood and actually making it proper public open space, open to all at all times. So after numerous meetings in 2021, the property was listed for sale. And there's a lot more detail here that I won't get into the full detail here tonight, but these are kind of the highlights. It was listed for sale in the open market in 2021. We took a lot of meetings with development groups interested in this property. And at the time that it was listed, there was no agreement in place of what would be offered to the city, what would be retained as open space. It was just the property was listed for sale. The city was invited to submit an offer. So in spring 2021, the city submitted an offer for the purchase of 3 acres of open space. This had heavy involvement with the local neighborhood and the local church congregation. They were very active in communicating with Mayor Peterson and actually directly with church officials as well. And you may remember there were some articles in the Salt Lake Tribune and other media outlets at the time. Regardless, we submitted an offer for 3 acres, competitive offer, just like other private development groups. After numerous meetings, updated offers, more detail, a lot of discussion, the owner, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, made the final decision to offer 2 acres of land, the eastern 2 acres, for sale to the city. So 2 acres to the city and 4 acres to a private developer, which ended up being Ivory Homes, chosen as the buyer. The layout, though, of the eastern 2 acres caused some concerns for the city in terms of functionality of a park. So the city continued working with the church and Ivory Homes to try to find ways to maximize the design of that 2-acre park that the city was offered for sale. The main points that we emphasize is we want to ensure pedestrian access from Dover Hill Drive. Otherwise, there's not great walkable access to the eastern half of this parcel. We wanted maximum property frontage. The eastern 2 acres that I'll show you in a second, it's fairly narrow in terms of property access and frontage. So we were very interested in maximizing frontage along the public street. And then there's a nice pavilion structure that's in really good shape. And when the decision was made to offer the city 2 acres instead of 3, it was pretty clear that the baseball field and the bleacher structure, that stuff would not be able to be preserved and maintained. But the pavilion, we felt with the right design could be. So we expressed that interest very clearly to the church and to Ivory Homes. And we had numerous meetings with representatives from Ivory Homes primarily, to see if they could cater a design around these requests to optimize the city park portion of the property. So what we got after a few rounds of meetings and discussions was the submittal you see in front of you is a proposed plan unit development, as well as a draft development agreement. And this will be an agreement that's entered into by the city, approved by the city council and Ivory Homes, basically to ensure things happen that aren't part of this code subdivision process. And that's mainly geared around the park. Again, maximizing park frontage, providing that pedestrian access, preserving the pavilion, things like that would be contemplated in that development agreement. So that's a really quick high-level overview of the work that's been put into this. Again, lots of meetings, lots of phone calls with church officials, with Ivory Homes, with neighbors in the area, trying to, at every opportunity, make it clear that the city is very interested in public open space. The purchase has not happened yet, but the offers are there, and they're not at risk at this time. So what's desired from the Planning Commission is preliminary approval of the plat, the subdivision plat, and conditional use approval for the plan unit development. And that is desired, if possible, prior to the development agreement being considered by the city council. As I'm sure you're aware, the city council has one more meeting this year, and then we have a new mayor, 2 new council members, so the council completely changes over. So that development agreement is going for discussion and potential consideration by the city council in a couple of weeks on December 14th. So the timing here has been pretty tight. However, we feel that in terms of a preliminary submittal, like what this is, this application addresses a lot of the concerns raised by the city. What Ivory's proposing on their private land is within ordinance, and I'll go through that here in a minute. And I will also explain kind of the reason for the PUD submittal rather than a standard subdivision.
Let's look at first at the subdivision of the property. Let's start there.
Yep. So this is the proposed subdivision of property. What I do want to show quickly, what the city ultimately was offered was a configuration that's just the eastern 2 acres of the park. This is not exact. This is me drawing a square that's 2 acres, but that's essentially, to give you a visual example, that's what the eastern 2 acres kind of gets you. So, good depth of property, but very limited access. And you can see the pavilion structure here is outside of that. Not ideal even for a small neighborhood park in terms of getting people in and designing that park. So what has been proposed, and hence the reason for the development agreement, is a park configuration different than what's been offered to both parties for sale. So this would require some sort of real estate transaction after purchase between Ivory and the city, or potentially working with the church to
And show us that
change the
line again.
description.
Where that is now, what you're proposing.
Oh, this is what's proposed now.
So where's the line, the property line between?
So the
Cottonwood
open
Heights
space is, I'll try to draw it in.
and- I want to see the property line between Cottonwood Heights and Ivory Homes.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. The property line is, oops, sorry, right there. So everything south of that yellow line would be Cottonwood Heights, and then this would also be Cottonwood Heights. So parcel A, which is almost 2 acres, would be the city park parcel. Parcel B would be a pedestrian pathway connecting Dover Hill Drive, public access over to that neighborhood park. The pavilion, for reference, is approximately right there. So this would preserve that.
And the park access is where?
The pedestrian park access is here. Now, all that's been offered to the city at this point is purchase. So obviously a park design would need
That
to
comes
take
later.
place. That would come later though, with more public input and consideration. But yeah, this is what's being proposed via plan unit development application and development agreement.
And is that the only public entrance into the
Now,
park?
so this Summerhill Drive is all a public
The
street.
road.
Right.
So that would
all
be
open.
that'd be the other access as well. Parking obviously is a concern, and that would be considered as the park design,
Design.
kind of the next phase of the project and how that's all laid out. So having expressed, an interest to maximize frontage, preserve the pavilion, and provide pedestrian access to this neighborhood over here. If I go back, you can kind of see to get to, let's just say, this parcel, this eastern parcel from anywhere over here without a pedestrian connection it's not easy, and it's not really walkable because you have to drive all the way down to 3500 East, I believe, and go down
Supposed to start
and
aerial.
come back up. So
Yeah,
So no good way to access this eastern half without some sort of connection. In there.
Mike, while you're here,
Mhm.
this line, which is the existing property line between the 2 parcels right now, where is that in relation to the other line that you just drew?
Let's see
It
if we
looks to
can.
be off by a fair bit.
I think they're 3 and 3 right now.
They are.
Yeah,
okay.
this
sorry,
is
my table myself.
yeah, that's correct. This is 3 and this is 3. This line right now is the existing.
It's just
ball
moved up
field
on
and
Summer
park.
Hills bit, yeah. okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
So it actually, the new configuration is wider. It's wider than this, maybe by a little bit, but does not include this northern portion.
So while we appreciate all that background on the park, what we're being asked tonight at the planning commission is the PUD.
Correct. Absolutely. It's important though, because this is all, that the park is the reason for the PUD, and the city's desire to optimize the park is what caused Ivory to submit a PUD rather than a standard subdivision.
If they just did a standard subdivision, would they have to do any more than say, here's my application?
If it's
for a
more than
building
10
permit?
homes, yeah.
More than 10 homes needs preliminary plat approval, but there's no conditional use portion.
They
It's
just-
Right,
it's a plat, and if the lots meet code, it's approved.
Or open space.
If they're just developing their 4 acres, there's no open space
this
requirement.
meets the subdivision
Yeah.
requirements, yeah.
Given
So
that a lot
let's-
of people that have a lot of time into this, is there
Yeah.
any reason to believe you're not going to be able to make this thing close?
No, but I mean, it's contingent on planning commission approval and other issues that I'll talk about that need to happen between preliminary and final. There's
Quite a
there's some
few,
site
actually,
details.
and
Yeah,
that's, I'm concerned about that, and that the layout, you spent a lot of effort, and we really appreciate that on the park. I think everyone does. But the PUD itself doesn't look like it's been really fully vetted.
well, let me walk through it. This is a residential subdivision. There were a lot of questions originally about rezoning that from other prospective buyers. That's not,
Can I ask just a logistical question on the PUD though? So the PUD is two components with the city at some point in time owning, maintaining pedestrian road and the 3 acres, correct?
that's not related to the PUD ordinance. That's what's being proposed.
No,
Right.
I understand that, but I'll get to that later because it does impact the PUD approval, but when they go to purchase this from the church, is it Ivory Homes buying the entire 6 acres?
No. Ivory
Or is
Homes
it a
buying
joint
4
development
acres
agreement?
and the city's buying 2 acres, but not in the configuration shown on the preliminary.
But the
plan.
entire 2 parcels is going to be subject to the PUD.
That's what's being proposed, yes.
Okay.
So these are details. If you don't want to talk about these, I'll skip
No,
and we can.
That's important.
The density is counting the whole 6 acre piece, which
Oh, you're.
even counting the 4 acre piece, the density still complies. So I've got that calculation
Let's
as
keep it to the
well.
4 acre piece, because that's what we're being asked.
Well,
I-
what's being proposed is a PUD that's 6 acres. 2 acres of it is the purchased city park. So there will be, and that's the reason for the development agreement is we're tying this public and private application into one kind of process. But regardless, so over 6 acres, the density is 2.75 units per acre, 17 lots. On 6 acres, 33 lots by code could fit in there if they're designed right. On 4 acres, that drops to 23. 17 lots still complies, even if we're taking out 2 acres. Open space, 2 acres are proposed, which would all be publicly owned. Let's say this was a 6 acre PUD not owned by the city. The city wasn't involved, which is not the case. They would only need to provide 20% open space and it does not need to be public. If the 2 acres is taken out and it's just a 4 acre proposal, 0 open space is required. And they wouldn't
15%
be
is required.
going
That's
through the
not
PUD
true.
ordinance
Our ordinance says 15% minimum
of subdivisions 5 acres or greater.
PUD.
Right, but what I'm saying is if the city park was not part of this and it was just the 4 acre piece without the reconfiguration of lot lines to optimize the city park design, Ivory would propose a 4 acre subdivision that has no open space requirement and would not be going through
Would
the
have an
PUD
open
process.
space. I disagree on that, but go ahead.
Okay, well, Ivory can clarify what they would do if this wasn't the configuration. Anyways, access is split. So 12 lots will be accessed from Summerhill and the private driveway, the private road proposed. 5 lots will be accessed from Dover Hill Drive, which is the existing public road. So here's the staff analysis. You have this in more detail in your staff report. PUD must demonstrate creative use of land, distinct and different from what could be provided with a standard subdivision. Use of the land must be efficient, utilize a smaller network of utilities and streets, and allow a greater amount of open lands. Our finding here is that the primary purpose of the PUD request put forth by Ivory is to enhance the city park portion of the property beyond what was offered to us as a city, beyond what we could normally achieve through this real estate process we've been through. It provides access from Dover Hill Drive. It maximizes park frontage. It preserves a very valuable pavilion. It also helps preserve and actually make fully public rather than a quasi-public or private open space, a significant need for accessible, fully public open space in this neighborhood area. Part of the PUD allows for massing requirements to be modified. So in the past, Giverny is an example, Newberry Grove is an example, Royal Lane, or not Royal Lane. There's another development off of Creek Road as an example of PUDs. We've seen PUDs in the city be approved with much smaller lots with different building height requirements, with different building height measurements. Basically, under the PUD, if certain findings are met, a developer, a private landowner can propose to vary the zoning standards for a lot. What's being requested here is a modification of lot width and side setbacks to provide the proposed number of housing units, which is 17, that are laid out in a way that maximizes the design of the city park space. Again, based on preliminary meetings, if there was not an effort here to maximize the park space, Ivory Homes would not be coming forward with a PUD application. It would be a standard subdivision, likely a cul-de-sac, self-contained, all the lots would meet code. No variation is proposed to reduce the lot size below 8,000 square feet, and no variation is proposed to the maximum structure height or how that's measured. I won't go through all of this, but this is an inventory of the lots proposed. The 17 lots are all over 8,000 square feet, so they're compliant with zoning. And you can see here the variation in lot width that's been requested. 70 is the minimum in R18 zone. So there's one that's 55. The rest are generally within 5 feet of what would be required. Resulting from the requested lot width variation is reduced side setbacks. So normally we require 20 feet between both side yards. Neither can be less than 8. You can have a side yard of 8, but the other has to be 12. They're requesting 10 total, so 5 yard side setbacks, but no request to vary front or rear lot lines.
Mike, in your conversation with them, with Ivory, they have experience with this in Daybreak, going for narrow and long. Did they give you any idea kind of what their design plan is for that particular? Because I'm concerned. It's an unusual shape. It's not something that we do well in Utah typically. It has been done, but did they give you any indication about what they would like to do?
The design of the homes?
Yeah, just how it's going to sit on the lot, because it's a unique shaped lot for Utah.
Yeah, I mean, the lots themselves are actually relatively conventional rectangular lots. You have a few here that are impacted by, fire turnarounds.
But when you're at a fifth of an acre and those widths are not typical. The fifth of an acre definitely is for sure, but that narrowness of it changes the dimension, and from a design standpoint, that's more unique.
Yeah, that's you can certainly ask the applicant that. This also has to go to the Architecture Review Commission
For sure.
for design compliance, and they'll get into that conversation there as well, and how this is laid out, how it works, what the housing product is, what the materials are.
I would like to drill down on that, not here, but I hope that we can hear from Ivory a little bit.
Sure.
My opinion with Ivory is that from their worst development to their best development is an incredibly broad range in the state. They've done some of the most fantastic developments and some of the most atrocious things that we've seen in the state. I would love to see their A game on this project.
I believe, based on my understanding of property value in this area, that this will be a high-end product. They certainly are invited to weigh in on
Does this
that.
show, and this follows up on what I think you're part of what you're saying, Dennis, do we know, it looks like this is probably like an 80% lot coverage. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, this may exceed the 50%. I don't know the exact.
Definitely exceeds 50.
What is not being buried though, which I feel is important, is the rear setback and the front setback. We've had other PUDs that have buried these, and we've run into issues with parking lots that don't fit certain cars, rear yards that are 10
So
feet
just to be
away.
clear, what you're saying is the front's 25 feet and the rear's 20 feet.
Yes, yep.
So one of the issues that I keyed in on pretty early with this application was for the PUD approval, we're supposed to be evaluating the architectural control to evaluate whether or not it's harmonious to the overall community, and we're not seeing site elevations. So I understand that based on the property valuations and whatever else, but every developer that's ever come before me on any body has always tried to do it to extract the most amount of profit.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
That is the role
their
of the
job.
Architecture Review Commission.
Not us.
So before final approval, they need to issue certificate of design compliance for the design standards.
I understand that, but we're asking to approve a PUD, and we're supposed to evaluate whether or not the PUD meets the goals, but we don't know if the PUD meets the goals. We're just going to approve the PUD and defer to the ARC, even though it seems to be a duty that we hold.
So what we're saying is they're a sub body that plays into this process. Their job is to ensure that the design goals of the PUD are met. So that is their role, because the Architecture Review Commission is made up of licensed architects, landscape architects, developers, designers. So in the past, in every PUD we've done, that has been the role of the ARC.
And our PUD ordinance does say that there should be design guidelines along with these is part of the conditions of the planning commission. So you're right on.
And that is a recommended condition of approval, is to submit design guidelines that the ARC has to approve.
It's, yes, and I saw that. It's just, it's one of those things of,
Do we have enough information?
right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, you know, it wasn't lost on me that in reading the public comments on this of people have some serious concerns of what's going to get built. I mean, I would, if there was an empty lot, and I would want to know, what is the house going to look like? And is that going to be compatible with the overall
It's an
thing?
established neighborhood, yeah.
Well, and I would ask this clarifying question too, and I think, I know we don't get down into the weeds in terms of the exact shape and size of the house. I would just like, you know, some demonstrated, one of my concerns goes to the elevation change. And that one I think is within our purview,
It is.
because if you, in that, the area on the north side of that lot has almost a 20-foot difference in a very short span. So if you climb the steps, just to give a reference point, there are 16 steps getting from the bottom to the top. So you've got almost 2 floors in terms of an elevation change. And I would just love to hear from them what the anticipated approach is. Are they going to retain it all at the back? Are they going to split the difference? Or is it all going to be pushed to the very, very front and we're going to have to deal with it at the park? So those kind of things I'd love to hear,
Yeah, we can
because I
ask
do
that.
think that is within our purview. But I mean, and I'm not saying that it can't be solved. I just want to know, is that going to be pushed onto us, or can they handle that? And especially if we're going to go to a reduced lot size.
Yeah, in the preliminary grading plans, it does not show any walls, especially adjacent to the park. They ease the slope from the north side to the backyards of the home, so that the backyards would be sloped. They would level out, and then you may have a slope down to the park, but not so severe that it needs to be
Can you
retained.
bring
But
that plan up so we can? just take a
I
peek
can
at it?
get, it's not in this slideshow. So here are the other criteria. We're running low on time, so design criteria, I've kind of shared my perspective on. We do have a city commission that is tasked with dealing with that exact thing. Pedestrian movement, staff feels that this achieves pedestrian movement very well, given the attention given to access to that park space. Effect on adjacent properties, the reduced setbacks will have an effect, but in terms of lot sizes and building heights, it's what's allowed in city code, and it's what could be built in a standard subdivision that's not subject to the PUD process. So no variations are proposed there. Access standards, the private road is subject to full review by the city engineer. The fire department has to clear all that stuff. That's part of the review between preliminary and final. And then preservation of natural features, protection from soil erosion and inconsistent development patterns. Again, we feel there's no zoning change proposed and no lots less than 8,000 square feet. So it's not inconsistent from what's around it. The footprints of the homes may be a little different. There may be 1-story homes in the neighborhood today. These could be 2, but so could any home rebuilt in the neighborhood today. Preservation of natural features. Obviously, I've talked enough about the park, but we have also recommended a condition that they survey all of the existing trees, identify which ones are healthy, and any of them that are not impacted by the actual private development, that they preserve that. And we did that with another project, and they had an arborist go out, and we hired an arborist to review their work, and it actually was beneficial. Sensitive lands. This is a big component of this. The property is located within a sensitive lands overlay zone. The primary hazard potential on site, based on the information we have, is a potential fault line or fault hazard. However, the city will review the entire site and require screening for all hazards, clear the site of any hazards. If hazards are suspected or identified, they will have to be fully studied with soils reports or trenching or whatever is required to study that hazard. And those reports and recommended mitigations will be reviewed by the city's development review staff. Prior to final approval, the project will be required to complete all sensitive lands hazard studies, which would include fault trenching and anything else like that. If faults are identified, city ordinance requires identification of fault hazard areas on the recorded subdivision plat, and then recordation of notices against the title of any affected property. I have another caveat there, but this, to give you an example, is the the sensitive lands overlay. So the eastern portion of that property is where we think the most hazards could exist. That being said, we'll clear the whole site. So next steps. So preliminary approval and PUD approval at the preliminary plat level is essentially a proof of concept. Conceptually, this layout works. Conceptually, this would be the planning commission's findings. Complies with zoning code, complies with the PUD ordinance. The PUD is a conditional use, so you can impose reasonable conditions to mitigate perceived impacts. The next steps would be Architecture Review Commission to look at the design guidelines, the landscaping, the architecture, everything else. City Council Development Agreement, which was actually requested by the city to ensure the public park design that we worked to see here is incorporated and is followed through with, because those requests are not part of code, and it's not something we could require by code outside of a special agreement between the city and Ivory. And also because the proposed park layout differs than what we as a city have been offered for purchase. Preparation and review of final plat and final construction plans. And this is going to take the most time and be the most extensive part of this entire process. This includes complete construction plans, so civil site plans, grading plans, drainage, erosion control, utilities, other plans as required. A traffic study to verify that the traffic generated by this does not put any of our roads over capacity. Review and approval by all city departments. A complete sensitive lands analysis, which will take extensive time. And then final plat recordation is last. That's what grants building entitlement. Preliminary plat grants a preliminary entitlement, but no permits can be submitted until that final plat is recorded. Here's the asterisk that I want to point the commission to, and is also recommended as a condition. If any issues are discovered in this process, this next steps process that result in modification to the subdivision layout, the number or location of lots, then a new preliminary plat has to come back through planning commission. Basically, if anything in the review process changes what we see tonight, it all comes back and we kind of start over. Again, here's the conditional use authority by state code. Conditional uses are entitled approval. Land use authority may impose reasonable conditions to mitigate anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed conditional use.
Before you go on, I just wanted to kind of go back to a couple of the other points, just reviewing the statute. As part of the pre-application process, an architectural concept of the structures of the proposed development was supposed to be included. And I don't know if this is a question for Chairman Coots or for you, Mike, but what if the architectural concept be site elevation plans of even a sample house?
Yes, that's what we're recommending, has to be approved by the ARC. So we're recommending it as a condition.
But it seems that this is a statutory requirement of the pre-application process that may or may not have been met. And I get that we're saying we're gonna punt it. Where I'm uncomfortable with is reading over a lot of the proposed findings, and obviously we don't have to accept the findings, but reading over a lot of the findings, I don't know how we can jump to that logical conclusion without some of the other information.
Yeah, what they have stated in their application submittal is that the building materials will be maintenance-free masonry, hardy board, natural or stained wood. No stucco, aluminum, or vinyl siding will be used, except for soffit and fascia of homes. And then again, the full design guidelines are being requested as a condition of approval subject to ARC approval prior to final plat or final approval of anything.
Mike, I think we understand the urgency with the arrangement, with the development agreement that you guys have been working so hard on. I think the struggle I'm hearing from Commissioner Ebler, I'm having myself, is this foreshortened public process, and the way this PUD is being, like, for instance, you have state code up there. I have our city code for PUD approval, which is a bit different.
And it's problematic.
But it is our city code. And this is, so
Shane can confirm that state code will overrule city code. I'm aware that the city code says a PUD is not entitled to approval and may be denied. The state code for conditional uses says something completely different.
that's great. And I think, so you guys have some work to do on your code, but we're asked to follow our city code and to look at it and to judge based on that. And I think a lot of the things that are being brought up as questions by us, and will continue as we hear from Ivory in their presentation, and I'm sure from the public, is that a lot of these things aren't done yet. I understand that is the urgency, the changeover in the council, is that what you're concerned about?
That's part of it, and deadlines are approaching for closing on properties and purchase of properties, and
So what gets foreshortened is the public process in that whole thing.
this is all, the development agreements, a public process, the whole thing, I mean, the Architecture Review Commission is a public meeting. I don't think it's uncommon for a preliminary plat to be approved and considered in one meeting with a properly noticed public hearing.
Thank you.
So because the staff report, we recommend approval of this. We think there's great benefit here. The density, the actual structure type proposed, single family dwelling detached, matches the area. Could be built in a different configuration that's less beneficial to the city under a standard subdivision process. We recommend approval of this preliminary plat and planning and development, again, subject to all the conditions in your staff report.
Thank you.
I move we adjourn to the other meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.